I told a story, I don't know, 3, 4 years ago. And I thought I'd like to repeat that story to you because I think it has some real application for Veterans Day 11/11/11. And it's because, you see, I am old enough, and I know there are others in this audience that remember some of our World War I vets. When I was a young man, I lived in Panorama City, and I can remember talking to my mom, I got to get a job. I'm 16 years old. I was still in high school. I went up to the Vaughn's Market up at the corner and got hold of the manager and asked him for a job. He said no. Got home, told Mom, well, that didn't work. She said, go back next week and try it again. Mom, come on. I went back next week, saw the same man, smiled at him, shook his hand. I'd sure like to go to work for you, dear. No. Okay. Boy, Mom, that's brutal. She says, well, it's not that brutal because you're going back next week and do it again. And I went back next week, looked him in the eye, shook his hand, and said, I really want to go to work here. He said, do you have a long sleeve shirt? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. He said, go home and put it on and come on back. And that led to 6 years of working at Vaughn's Markets for me. And I got to tell you, it was quite an experience. And I say that because there was a gentleman that used to come in. I'd see him 2, 3 times a week going through the checkout stand and got to know him as he was Mr. Rose. And Mr. Rose was probably in his mid to latter 60s. Very, very nice gentleman. But you know, he had, if I may say, a bit of a disability, a challenge, if you will. His hands were like 2 flapjacks. He could not do any of this. Didn't exist. It was just this, anything, as long as you didn't ask him to make a fist, do anything with his fingers. Kind of unusual. And of course, I was always happy to help Mr. Rose anytime I could. And one day he asked me, he says, Bob, I was wondering, he said, would you mind coming over? He said, you know, I have the dry cleaners across the street. I said, oh, I know, Mr. Rose. He said, well, it's kind of hard for me to clean the racks. And he said, I was wondering if I could get you to come over and help me maybe on Saturday. And I said, you know, sir, I'd be more than happy. When I got over there and I cleaned all the racks in his cleaners and tried to help him, he wanted to give me $5. And I said, sir, I don't want your money. I'm just happy to do it for you. Well, time went on, and of course I always took my cleaning to Mr. Rose as well because I had such regard for him. Another visit, I was over there cleaning his racks on another occasion, and we get to visiting a little bit, and it came up that he had been in the service. And he told me that he had served in World War I. And he said, Bob, he said, I didn't get shot. He said, I got gassed. And he said, that is why I lost the ability to use my hands. It was a year or so after that I went into the Army in 1965. And I was over there and I saw Mr. Rose, and he said, Bob, hang on for just a moment, will you? I've got to get something out of the back room. I'll be right back up here. I said, well, sure, sir. A few moments later, he came up to the counter in front of his store, and he placed on the counter a nickel, a buffalo head nickel. And he said, Bob, that nickel was carried by a man in World War II. When he completed his service, he brought it back and he gave it to me. He said, I next gave it to a man who fought in Korea. He also came home and returned my nickel. He said, Bob, you're going to return this nickel to me too when you return home. And I will simply put it this way, of course I returned that nickel. May all of our service members, ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of them, be carrying a nickel from Mr. Rose. Thank you.